A while ago, after I shared one of my videos, I boosted it on Facebook to see if I could reach a wider audience with it. Somehow, it attracted the attention of some people who apparently didn't even watch the video, but didn't like it simply for the fact that I was teaching the Bible. A couple of them shared some memes that were so ridiculous that I thought it would be neat to do a series of videos on Beyond the Meme. If you haven't already, click the subscribe button right under this video and also click that little bell so you don't miss anything, because I know you don't want to. So here we go. In case you're not familiar with memes, they're short sayings or pictures that are supposed to make a point about something funny, political, religious, or whatever. While memes can be a lot of fun, they can also do a lot of damage because we have a serious disease in our world today, and it's not COVID. It's the disease of shallow thinking. Truth can rarely be summed up in a meme, but people post them and then sit back in their lazy boy, grab another handful of chips, and think they've successfully won an argument. But sometimes these memes are so stupid that they're laughable if you're willing to engage in just a moment of thinking. So we're going to look at some memes, not to ruin your fun, but to encourage you to think beyond the meme. The one we're going to look at today is someone who I assume is an atheist, put in a reply to one of my videos. Here it is. I think the person who posted this really thought that it was a bona fide attack against Christianity, like it was supposed to be a slam dunk refutation of the Bible. In reality, calling the character of the God of the Old Testament into question is something that's brought up so much that it's almost tiresome. So let me explain to you what this meme is supposed to be saying. The point is that the Bible only has a problem with one of these: genocide, rape, lobster, or slavery. Of course, the answer is supposed to be lobster because the Old Testament law allowed only eating sea creatures that had fins and scales. So the Bible condemns eating lobster, it allows genocide, rape, and slavery. This is supposed to evoke a response like, yeah, the Bible is so dumb. We all know lobster's okay, but genocide, rape, and slavery are wrong, so don't believe the Bible. This person obviously doesn't understand much about the Bible. That's not a big deal to me, really. I don't expect an unbeliever to believe the Bible. That's why we call them unbelievers, right? But two things about this meme really captured my attention. First, whoever made the meme understands that some things are right and some things are wrong. Where did he get that idea? If right and wrong are not subjective, which is assumed in this meme, then what's their source? If you reject the Bible, then you have to reject God as the source for morals, and you can't find another arguably good source for morals anywhere else. Second, the misunderstanding behind the meme cannot only be found with unbelievers, but also in the church. The problem is faulty hermeneutics. Hermeneutics is just a fancy term for how we study the Bible. If you just pick up the Bible, read a few verses, and then put it down and make some application, you're going to come up with something ridiculous like this. Wow, God told the Israelites to go and kill people. He must love genocide. Really? Well, let's look at each of these to find out what the Bible really says about them. First, genocide. I assume the problem here is that God commanded the Israelites to kill everyone in Canaan and take the land for themselves. That's a common argument that skeptics make. But what was really going on? The first thing we have to understand is that God, as the author of life, has complete authority over it. He brought life into existence, and he can end it if he wants. And death doesn't really end life anyway. Death just transfers the location of a person. But there was a specific reason that he told the Israelites to eradicate the Canaanites. We find it in Leviticus 18. Do not defile yourselves with any of these things, for by all these the nations are defiled, which I am casting out before you. For the land is defiled, therefore I visit the punishment of its iniquity upon it, and the land vomits out its inhabitants. God ordered the slaughter of the Canaanites as punishment for their sins. If the Israelites did not completely wipe them out, then they would turn the Israelites to follow their gods, which is exactly what ended up happening. So the Bible does not condone genocide. In a specific time, God used his people to punish the Canaanites because of their sin. And it was all working out a plan that God had to put the Jewish people right where he wanted them so Jesus could come and be the sacrifice for sin for the whole world. So the whole thing was set up because of people's decision to sin in the first place. As humanity, we messed it up. And the fact that some people died on the path to fixing it is not God's fault. Now, what about rape? There is a passage in Deuteronomy that seems to honor a man for rape. It's in chapter 22, verses 28 to 29. If a man finds a young woman who is a virgin, who is not betrothed, and he seizes her and lies with her, and they are found out, then the man who lay with her shall give to the young woman's father 50 shekels of silver, and she shall be his wife, because he has humbled her. He shall not be permitted to divorce her all his days. What? He rapes her so he gets to marry her? Not so fast. First, Notice that this follows a condemnation of rape. If a man rapes a betrothed woman, he'd be put to death. Second, there's no celebration of rape here. This man is forced to marry the woman whether he wants to or not, with no possibility of divorce. In a day where being a single woman was looked down on socially, this could actually be a benefit to the woman. Being defiled, she might find it harder to get another husband. But wait, you say, she has to marry her rapist? This leads us to the third thing to notice. These verses may not even actually refer to rape. In a previous verse, verse 25, a stronger Hebrew word is used to denote rape and is translated as force. Here, a weaker word is used and is translated as seized. This word describes physically handling something, but not necessarily by force. Also, verse 28 says, and they are found out, which seems to treat them as a unit rather than a perpetrator and a victim. This might very well be a case of consensual or at least unhindered sex. Finally, isn't slavery condoned in the Old Testament? The concept of slavery is found in the Bible, especially in the Old Testament. However, it's different often than the slavery that we think of today. Often people will put themselves in servitude to someone else to pay off a debt that they owed. In fact, Exodus 21:16 specifically calls for the death penalty for someone who kidnaps a man and either keeps him as a slave or sells him. And Deuteronomy 23:16 prohibits returning a slave who has escaped. In Leviticus 25, we have the laws for the year of Jubilee, which would happen every 50 years. Verses 39 to 41 discuss how a poor person might sell himself to someone, but he'd be released in the year of Jubilee. We could go deeper on these topics, but I think we've made the point to show that these are insufficient arguments to reject the God of the Bible. So, what's the verdict on this meme? Don't let yourselves be fooled by uneducated and shallow arguments. Engage in serious study of the Bible, and I think you'll find that the Bible is worthy of your trust. Thanks for joining me, and don't forget to think beyond the meme.